Welcome to the Deploy Securely podcast, where we go deep on the security, compliance, and privacy implications of using artificial intelligence. I'm your host, Walter Haydock, founder of StackAware. Today, I'm joined by Kujtim Kryeziu, who is the co-founder and CEO of Sentry, leading a 60-person team delivering offensive and defensive cybersecurity services with deep hands-on experience in network security, incident response, threat intelligence, and large-scale defensive operations across public and private sectors. He's also worked with government institutions on policy and legal frameworks for critical information and infrastructure, bringing a practical, exercise-driven approach through cyber war games and tabletop simulations, translating directly into regulated environments like healthcare and life sciences. And I can say, having personally worked with Kujtim, he is one of the foremost authorities on penetration testing, AI red teaming, and offensive security. Disclaimer, he is a StackAware partner, and we are very happy to have him on the show. Kujtim, thanks for joining.
Thank you, Walter. I'm really glad to be here. We've been working together for quite some time now on AI security, so I'm really looking forward to expanding on this topic.
Awesome. Can you tell me a little bit more about Sentry? Can you talk a little bit more about your background and kind of how you started Sentry, what led you to do that, what problems you saw?
Well, Walter, I was always fascinated by how networks worked. So back in the days, like many curious teenagers, I kind of started exploring how system worked, including how controls were implemented and sometimes how they could be bypassed. So I still remember the adrenaline rush of understanding something deeply enough to break through it. So that curiosity kind of pushed me to learn everything I could about how systems and security mechanisms actually function. So that's kind of how I began my career, very hands-on on network and cloud security, incident response, threat intelligence, where I've had the chance to work in environments where failure had real consequences. Over time, I've moved into large-scale defensive operations, and I've done some policy work around critical information infrastructure. What really led me and my friends to found Sentry was kind of a reoccurring gap that we saw. So companies were investing a lot in tools, defense mechanisms, compliance, but they weren't kind of pressure testing their assumptions. Security was kind of all often theoretical, and that's kind of how we built Sentry around adversarial validation. So red teaming, realistic simulations, because security only becomes, if you ask us, security only becomes real when you stress it on the real world conditions. Of course, AI red teaming is simply the next evolution of that philosophy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think having security in your design documents and having it in your policies is necessary, but it's not sufficient. You need to stress test things in the real world to see where they break. And, working with you and your team, I've seen you find some pretty interesting ways to exploit and abuse AI systems before they go into production and before they could potentially impact customers. So I definitely agree that having a proactive approach and also a real world approach is critical, because if you just stop with the documentation, you stop with kind of the theoretical, you're going to miss a lot of problems, because the bad guys, they don't care at all about the theory. They only care about the practice.
Yes, definitely.
Awesome. And can you say a little bit more about Sentry? I know you have some co-founders, its mission, and where you see the company going.
Yeah, sure. So at its core, Sentry is kind of focused on making security tangible and provable. We specialize, our bread and butter is offensive security. So we offer a range of offensive security such as AI red teaming, penetration testing, red teaming, and managed security services, primarily for high impact industries where resilience truly matters. So our mission, I would say, is quite simple. If a system can be exploited in theory, we want to prove whether it can be exploited in practice, but by means safely and responsible means before a real adversary kind of does it to you. So I think that with AI systems, that mission becomes even more critical, because now the attack surface is no longer just technical. I can say it's behavioral, contextual, and often invisible to traditional security teams. So one of our biggest focus currently is now to focus on AI security as a company.
Awesome. I think that's a good segue to the next question because StackAware and Sentry just recently co-released the AI Risk Readiness Kit, which is a list of the top 5 architectural issues that you have found during your engagements and that we've identified in ours. And we kind of gave people a list of mistakes that are commonly made, and we wanted to bring those to the surface ahead of time. Can you elaborate on that and talk about some of the recommendations you would have for companies that are building agentic AI systems, AI applications, chatbots, things like that?
Sure thing. I think beyond the technical failure modes, such as, for example, prompt injection, data leakage, model manipulation, I think the biggest recommendation that I have is that teams should treat AI systems as dynamic, evolving attack surfaces, and not as static features, which we've been having this mindset from the legacy systems. On the practical recommendations, I think that companies and teams should design for abuse cases and not just use cases. Most AI applications are built around what the user should do. Red teaming kind of forces you to model what the user shouldn't do, or what an adversary will try to do. Another very important thing is that you should always separate model trust from system trust. Just because the model output seems confident, and LLMs, they are very good at making themselves look confident, that doesn't mean that it's safe. Guardrails must exist outside the model. So when I say a separate model from a model trust from system trust, what I mean is that the model should never be treated as a security boundary. The surrounding system must validate, constrain, and monitor what the model outputs. The AI can generate, but the system must always govern. And I think the third one, which I would recommend, is to continuously test post-deployment. So AI risk is not a one-time penetration test. Models change, prompts evolve, integration expand, and they are going in the speed that we have not seen before. So you need ongoing adversarial validation. So I think that if teams internalize this kind of mindset early on, I think that they can avoid most of the failures later.
Appreciate that. Yeah, I think number 2 is really important because I feel like this is a common failure mode, and it's not even clearly agreed upon in the security community about this, even though I think it's very clear to me. For example, you don't need to comment on this, but I will. You can if you want. I reviewed the A2AS framework, and what it does is it uses non-deterministic systems like models to essentially determine whether it's appropriate or not to share data with someone, which I think is actually a key flaw. So I'll let you comment on that if you want, because you're nodding your head.
I completely agree. I think at the state that we're currently at, you said it right, it's a non-deterministic system. Currently, I don't think there's a lot of people that don't agree, but it's kind of, I do belong to the people that first I want to have systems that are deterministic and build around those. And then I will use, and I will always recommend to use the Gen AI just for generating output, and then using the systems to govern and monitor. Because until we get to a better solution, we'll keep using this type of model. So, but people are always welcome to try other models, and we'll always test them out.
I mean, like we said at the beginning, looking at the real world, and that's what's important. Although I think we can both agree that we found some real world flaws with that implementation model of using the model as the security layer. So
I
We
always
shall
joke
see.
that if we wouldn't have these type of implementations, we would be out of jobs. So uh, as long as people use it, that's good for us.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, well, you and I, we put out the AI risk readiness kit, which kind of lays it out there and says, hey, if if you're in the building stage, then here's some things to do before you even bring in red teaming. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, I find that red teaming sometimes is a reactive requirement. Not that you're being reactive, but sometimes customers will get to the point where they're about to release something and then realize that they haven't done any sort of adversarial testing, or maybe a customer says, "Can I see your penetration testing report for the system?" And that will trigger, outreach to you or me, which is a little late in the process, I think.
I do agree, but kind of with this industry's kind of I think it needs to shift, and we've seen that it's shifting because one-time assessments kind of do not show the reality of the system that you have it. So I think it's changing. It's something that also for penetration tests, it's kind of what's the same. People would first build it out and then launch it, and then have regulators breathing down their neck and then say, okay, I need a penetration test or red teaming. So, but I think that mindset is starting to shift with the speed of AI that it's innovating. So, and I think it's a must because nowadays you can launch a lot of interesting and massive scale attacks, and you need to keep up. And one-time pen tests and one-time adversarial testing is not going to do it.
Agreed on that. So, a common area of interest is AI security in healthcare and life sciences, and Stackware works with a lot of healthcare companies. And you mentioned that on your bio as being an area of interest. Can you share what's the biggest blind spot you see in those industries when it comes to AI security?
Yes, we've had the chance together with you to really test a lot of these systems, and one thing that I see even to well-funded organizations, I think that they underestimate how AI intersects with regulated data flows. The blind spot is not just model security. It can be a range of things. For example, shadow AI usage by staff, which is something really critical, or it can be implicit protected health information leakage through prompts, vendor AI integration that bypass traditional security review, or it can be an over-reliance on compliance instead of adversarial testing. And I think that healthcare especially tends to think that if it's HIPAA compliant, then we're safe. I think compliance is okay. It's a baseline. It's a starting point. But without adversarial testing, I think that you can never reveal the reality of your security baseline and where you stand as a company. So, kind of that's my take on it.
Understood. Understood. Yeah, we're seeing, at least in the United States, but also in Europe and other places, a set of laws that are specifically focused on the use of AI in healthcare. And I think one that was kind of interesting that didn't get a ton of attention was a Texas law that uh, basically requires data localization of health records, and that just came into effect earlier this year, from my recollection. So, there are a lot of shifting requirements when it comes to the use of artificial intelligence in healthcare, and New York State passed a law on AI companions, and their mental health chatbot regulations that are coming into play. So I think there's an evolving field there, on top of the sensitivity of the data, which is itself a great target for hackers. Each breached record is very valuable for attackers who are trying to do identity theft and things like that. So it's a high risk, high reward area in my opinion. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's the crown jewels of any organized criminal group. I think those data are some of the most critical, and I think it's good that regulations are moving at the speed. At least from my side, I think they are moving much faster than in the past, which is always a good thing because uh, if one, for example, the EU Act or whatever act on the AI, if one market tends to start to regulate and to push acts, I think a lot of them follow, which is always a good thing, and it kind of keeps track and it pushes that part. So I think that's a good thing because, as I said, the crown jewels and very critical data are found on these systems, and we really have to take care of those. So.
Absolutely. So moving along, in terms of, you are a provider of red teaming services. Can you talk about what a good customer of red teaming services does? Any things that folks should prepare ahead of time before they would engage with someone like you?
Yeah, so I would say for anyone who wants to really get value out of AI red teaming, as you mentioned, together we've created a free AI risk readiness kit. It kind of helps technical teams prepare properly, so that when they engage in adversarial testing, they get meaningful outcomes and not just a report. So I really encourage anyone who's listening or anyone who's building or deploying AI systems to go ahead and download it and check it, and they'll get a lot of value from those before doing the AI red teaming. So that said, I think another biggest differentiator at companies is kind of the mindset. So the best customers, they don't treat AI red teaming as a checklist, which we were speaking about. So they define real business impact scenarios. They involve engineering teams early on. They stay open to uncomfortable findings, and they focus on remediation and not optics. Red teaming, it's not about embarrassing teams. It's about safely discovering what attackers will eventually find. So when a client is mature enough to say, break it so we can fix it, I think that's when the real transformation happens.
Being open to learning some uncomfortable things about your system, but in a way that is controlled and where you have a responsible, ethical hacker who's pointing these things out rather than an unethical hacker.
Yep, you said
Yeah.
it. That does it.
In terms of the future, what it holds, there is a lot of talk and focus on security of AI, which is what we've been discussing. There's also AI for security, for example, penetration, like security operations centers, things like that. Then there's what I call AI for hacking, which is automated penetration testing, phishing email generation, tech-enabled AI red teaming. What do you see as the future, and how is Sentry dealing with that or preparing for that vision?
Yeah, automation will absolutely increase. In fact, many organizations already approach AI red teaming as largely automated. We at Sentry also leverage open source and commercial tools that allow us to generate adversarial prompts at scale. So I can say that these tools are very and extremely efficient at generating large volumes of adversarial inputs. They are very good at simulating different attack personas, identifying pattern level weaknesses, continuously testing deployed models. But AI red teaming, at least the way how we deliver it at Sentry, goes far beyond model safety testing. So many of these tools primarily focus on AI safety, which is jailbreaks, content policy bypasses, prompt manipulation. I think of course, that's really important, but that's only a part of the picture. So a significant portion of our work focuses on the integration layer. So the applications, the APIs, the infrastructure, and all of the backend systems that interact with these AI agents. So that's where the real business risk often lives. So we test how AI outputs influence workflows, how they interact with sensitive data, and how they can be leveraged to impact the broader system. The real shift that we're seeing is toward continuous adversarial validation, embedded directly in the development lifecycle, rather than relying on annual point-in-time assessment. Yeah.
So do you see that happening in an automated manner? Are there, technologies that you think are going to be impressive and helpful for that in the future?
Sure thing. I think we are automating a lot of stuff. Some things are easier to automate. Some are a bit harder. There are also They're also not, you cannot run a lot of tools that you automate in production. There's the compliance part. But definitely we're automating tools. There are great tools out there that are automating parts of the attack chain. Um, uh, some are very good. Some are stuff that you still need a human in the loop. But eventually we'll be able to cover a lot of ground. So we are seeing kind of a force multiplier. The way how we see it, AI here at Sentry is like a force multiplier that allows us, our security consultants, to deliver better results, bigger breadth, and kind of be able to cover a lot of ground and a lot of security projects. So that's kind of how we're utilizing AI in offensive security testing.
Awesome. So we're wrapping up toward the end of the show, and I want to give you the opportunity to give a plug for, you can give a plug for Sentry. We're going to put the AI Risk Readiness Kit, the link in the show notes for this podcast, so folks can download that. Is there anything else that you'd love people to check out, where they can learn more about you and Sentry?
Yes, I'll leave the audience with two resources. One of them being our AI Risk Readiness Kit, and the second one is our technical blog, which you can find at blog.sentry.security. This is where we publish our security research, testing methodologies, real world findings, and breakthroughs and breakdowns of AI exploitation patterns. Our goal at Sentry is to contribute to raising the overall maturity of AI security.
Amazing. Yeah, that's another good resource that I will put into the show notes. And I know you've had some interesting stuff posted there that I've taken a look at. So definitely appreciate that. Kujtim,
Right?
it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on the show, and look forward to our continued collaboration and seeing all the good work that Sentry does in the AI security space. And
Thanks for having me, Walter.
Yeah, absolutely. And to our audience, thank you very much for tuning in. Until next time, this has been the Deploy Securely podcast. Thanks a lot.